Hi, it's Alaska Granny. It's a great time to take an inventory of your pantry to make sure that you have the prepper pantry staples, the baking supplies, the basic supplies that allow you to continue to make the basic foods that you care to have if you're no longer able to buy them. What if you wanted to make some bread or some biscuits, pancakes or waffles? Do you have the things to make cookies and cakes and keep your family going with a variety of meals? There are certain basic foods that you can make with your baking supplies, but you need to have them on hand. The first supply is flour, but don't store it in the bag. That's not going to keep it airtight. It's not going to keep weevils out. It's not going to keep critters out. It's not going to keep it fresh. You want to at least put it in an airtight container. And if you want to have flour on hand, you need to store it a little better than that. But because it's a powder, it's very difficult to do things like vacuum seal it because it can completely mess up your vacuum sealer. You can put it in a paper bag and then use it with a food saver bag, or you can order it like I did from the LDS or the Mormon Church, and you can buy it already in a number 10 can. It's already sealed up to last for 25 or 30 years, and it's very high quality. During the pandemic, when you couldn't get flour, I was able to go to my prepper pantry and get out a can that I'd probably had for 10 years and open it up and try it. And it was perfectly fine, just fresh as can be. When you originally opened the can, it had a little bit of a can smell to it. We let it sit out for a few minutes and that odor dissipated, and then it was just like fresh flour. One of the things to note when you buy foods from LDS or the Mormon Church, you're paying for a 6-pack of cans. When you order from Augustin Farms or Mountain House, you're getting 1 can, but when you order from the LDS, you get 6 cans of that type of food. So when you're comparing prices, you're not comparing 1 to 1, you're comparing the price of 1 can to 6 cans. Then you can see that purchasing the foods online from the LDS Church, which I've done many times, is a really good deal because you're getting 6 cans of food. Next, you want to have sugar. Sugar needs to be kept dry. You want to keep it in an airtight container. I buy extra sugar at the store and put it away in canning jars, and I just seal the lid. I don't do anything else, and I've had no problem with this staying fresh for a long, long time. Occasionally, I'll tip them over. This has been in there for several years, and you can see it's still nice granulated sugar. Brown sugar, you need to keep it moist, so that also needs to be airtight. You can do something as simple as put a bag of brown sugar into a sealed up airtight container. I put it in jars before, but it's harder to get it out for me, so I prefer to do that in a little bit easier access type of containers. You need to keep brown sugar moist. If the brown sugar gets hard, you can do something as simple as open your container, drop in a slice of bread or a slice of apple or a little piece of a terracotta tile that you've moistened, close the lid and allow the sugar to absorb the moisture for a day or two, and then it should all be softened up again. You can also soften it in your microwave, but you risk that it gets too hot and it starts melting, so I prefer to let it soften over time. You can also make your own brown sugar with white sugar and molasses. I'll put a link to a video I made on how you can do that should you not have any brown sugar or you don't care to store all the different kinds of sugar. If you want to store powdered sugar, it's the same thing. Airtight, put it in a container and then it's going to be just fine. I have put sugars away. I don't do anything else except put them in an airtight container, and they've lasted a long time. You can also make your own powdered sugar by putting granulated sugar into your blender and whipping it all up. I made a video about that too, and it really works. We need to store salt. You can put salt in a Mylar bag, in a 5-gallon bucket, into a clean canning jar, and it will stay cool and dry. Don't just store piles of it in the cardboard containers, because I had a problem where it got completely hard and nobody wants to go to use a little bit of salt and you have to chip it away with a hammer or a grater. If you take the time to store it properly when you get it, then you don't have a catastrophe on your hand when you need some salt, so store it in an airtight container. Be sure that you label salt and sugar. Don't just take it for granted that you'll remember or recognize, because back in the day we had a Kool-Aid disaster because things were not labeled. You have baking soda, baking powder. You want to make sure that you're keeping track that you have these things and you have an extra supply of them. I've made videos about how to tell if baking powder and baking soda are still fresh. I'll put a link to those videos so you can check that out if you're wondering about the foods in your pantry. Cornstarch is great. You can use it for thickening your gravies, your soups, your stews, and it already comes in a nice airtight plastic container that you don't always get when you buy things like baking soda. Stock up on yeast. It's always good to have some on hand, even if you're not making bread regularly. Packages of yeast that could yield a lot of bread for your family. I consider oatmeal part of my pantry baking supplies. I do like to eat a lot of oatmeal just as oatmeal, but you can use oatmeal to make cookies. You can grind it up and make some flour and put it into breads. You can add it into meatloaves. There's all kinds of things you can do with oats, and they last nearly forever. You can take them right out of the container that you buy in the store and pour them right into a clean canning jar, and they're going to last for a long, long time. Oats are also something that I bought from the LDS church simply because it's a very convenient size to have it in a can. I've rotated them and they're top quality. You can have that food security knowing that you have food set aside that's not getting contaminated, it's not getting wet, it's not getting infested with any kind of a critter, and if you need to go and get that food, it's set aside and it's there to help feed your family. Eggs are part of their baking supplies, but you can't keep them in your pantry, but you can look for something like Bob's Red Mill Egg Replacer. This stuff works great. You measure it right out. You can have the eggs that you need in your pantry with your baking supplies. I also bought powdered eggs from Augustin Farms. Now you can find powdered whole eggs or powdered scrambled eggs. Which scrambled eggs, that's easy. But if you want to actually use eggs in baking, you want to have the whole egg because you don't want scrambled egg that has other seasonings and things in it. So if you're only going to choose one type of egg, I would recommend that you buy the whole egg so that you can have more uses for it in your cooking and your baking, or you can use it to make scrambled eggs if you choose. Then think about mixes that you like, pancake mixes, waffle mixes. These are great because you can just add water or just add water, oil. Some of them you need water, oil, and eggs. Read carefully what are the extra ingredients so that you make sure you have those in your prepper pantry. But then you can't just store them in a paper container. They become stale. They might get infested with critters. You can also end up with the weevils that naturally occur in the grain that are hatching out of your product. So if you plan on storing them long term, you need to set them aside in an airtight container. You can look for little packages of mixes. These are great for an everyday prepper pantry because you can pull these out, make a meal for your short-term pantry, but you can also get bunches of these and put them away in a 5-gallon bucket, and they're going to last for several years. So think about biscuits, muffins, pizza crust, that you basically only need to add water. Read the ingredients on the back. They're not created equal. If they require things like eggs and milk, I don't like to stock up on those. You may not always have milk and eggs, but you're probably going to have water, and then you can still use these products. Corn muffins are the same, but I've had problems with these for decades getting the weevils and bugs in them. So corn muffins, cornmeal, those kind of things, I don't like to stockpile more than a few months worth simply because I have had those go bad. That's one of the warnings that I'm giving you. If you like these, make sure that you're rotating them, keep track of them, and store them as airtight as possible. If you see a food that's interesting, buy one, take it home and try it. We all make mistakes with our food storage and our grocery shopping, but we don't want to waste food. So when you buy something, make sure it's part of your plan that you're going to use it. This is a way that you can have mixes already sealed to live in your pantry for 10 years or more. They're labeled that they'll last for 10 years, but I think if you store them carefully, that you can still count on them lasting longer. So you can have biscuits, you can have pancakes. Look for some of these things already sealed to last for you. It's a great way to have variety for the long-term food storage in the prepper pantry for the longest lasting foods. My family also has a sourdough starter. It's been in the family for generations. We've been making sourdough for decades, and he even has a name. This is Doan. Luckily, Alaska Granny is still making Doan. Sourdough starter is also something you can spread out on parchment paper and allow it to dry, and then you have the dried sourdough that you can reactivate when you need some. There are two tools that you need for your prepper pantry baking supplies. The first one is a sifter. People used to have a sifter all the time. Maybe you remember your old granny having one. You put your flour in the top and you sift your flour out. Okay, people didn't sift flour just to make it fluffy. They also use these because it helped remove the little weevils and critters that could get into the flour. The weevils are naturally occurring, and in the olden days they didn't have a way to freeze it for a few days and put it in an airtight container, and having to deal with the weevils was just something they had to put up with. So everybody had a sifter. There's different kinds of sifters. They have some with a hand sifter control. I like the one with the crank. If you don't have a sifter, pick one up. Think of it as a necessary emergency prepper item. If you want to make biscuits, you need a biscuit cutter because you're only supposed to put together the biscuit dry ingredients with your shortening and just cut it in together. That's what they call it. Cut it in together so it's like little knife edges. If you start stirring and mixing, then it takes away the fluffiness of your biscuits. So if you don't have a biscuit cutter, get one and then practice making biscuits. It's simple. The recipe is even right on the side of the baking powder. Global food prices are rising. We know shortages are happening, and we can see that there's droughts all over and food is just either not available, it's becoming expensive. It seems a little scary for the future. We want to make sure we have food security for ourselves and our families. So stock up on your prepper pantry staples that allow you to bake if you need to, and then seal those foods up carefully to make sure that they're really going to last. Only stockpile foods that you're willing to eat, that you know how to use, and then rotate and replace them. Remember, your pantry is a working pantry. You should be working your way through your food and then replacing it so that you'll always have the things that you need. If you enjoyed my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else you think might like it, and please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.